Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show. And now, here's Jeff Crilley.
Good Saturday morning, DFW. We've got a jam-packed show, and we're going to start the show off with a segment that is near and dear to my heart. Jim Whiddon, he is the author of The Old School Advantage, and I have a bunch of millennials, and they kid me that I'm old school, but I think the old school ways work. Jim, welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show.
Thank you, Jeff. It's great to be here with you.
Okay, so when we talk about old school, what do you mean?
You know, old school is the tried and true principles that have been around literally for centuries. And the reason we remember them and know them is because they work. And so we're trying to bring that wisdom, if you will, that discernment into this generation. In my opinion, frankly, it's missing to some degree with the millennial generation, of which I have four myself. And so that was the motivation.
Okay, so when we talk about old school ways versus new school ways, your book deals with a lot of kind of soft skills, everything from using the phone and handwritten notes. So let's get into the book. What are some of the things that people will learn from your book?
Well, we do deal with soft skills. We start out with 5 skills that deal with communication. So in other words, if a millennial is going into a job interview and they say, "Why should we hire you?" The first thing they ought to be able to say is that I communicate well. And then beyond that, I'm coachable and I love to learn. Think about those 3 qualities. I communicate well, I'm coachable, and I love to learn. And so the 5 skills that we teach, whether it's short-term memorization that goes all the way back to ancient Greece, or using power words or words that wow, as we call them, words and phrases. Also, by the way, scrubbing their vocabulary of those demons like and so, and even awesome, if it's overused, is a little bit of a demon, if you will, in this generation. And then we go into influence techniques and influence phrases, how to recognize those if they're being used adversely against you, but also, how to use them in such a way that they're helpful.
Okay, so since you brought it up, let's talk about some of these words, because I'm guilty of using the word awesome.
Okay.
Does the word awesome, is it just overused?
It's just overused. I mean, it's a great word, but let me give you a couple words that are just as good, perhaps even better, depending on the situation. How about the word exceptional?
That's great.
Or the word extraordinary? These are words that, in a sense, mean awesome, but they also are clues for somebody in this generation, this younger generation, that if they use that gets the attention of guys our age. And they said, that's interesting that he or she used that word.
That's exceptional advice.
See there? Didn't that feel good?
It did feel good.
Yes, there you go.
It really did. What are some other words that you would point out to millennials are overused?
Yeah. Oh, well, overused, definitely the word so. Like is the biggest culprit of our day. Yeah, they'll start sentences, yeah. Mm-hmm. You hear that from your kids. But some of the words and phrases that I think are the opposite of those overused words that can have such power. Think of this one. If a young person uses the term first things first, all right, what are they saying? First of all, it's unusual to hear that.
Right.
But they're saying I'm organized, I'm a logical thinker, I don't get ahead of myself, I stop down and calm down, and am ready to go to work.
Wow.
So just by using that phrase, first things first, it gives clues into who they are.
Let's talk about the handwritten note, because I remember years ago, I'm applying for a job at Channel 4, and I had the handwritten note ready in my car so that I could put it into the post box as soon as the interview was over. But these days, people will think nothing of writing an email. What's the difference?
Well, first of all, I would say that's why you have your own radio show.
Oh,
because you did that when you were younger. In fact, we tell young people that we have an opportunity to speak to that if they'll write one handwritten note every day for the rest of their lives, they cannot help but be successful. That's how powerful they are. And so you can take 15 seconds and send a text or an email, or you might take 15 minutes to actually have to find an address, find a card, write it out, find a stamp, take it to the mailbox. I mean, probably on average it's probably 15 minutes. But the most valuable thing we have is our time.
Yes.
And so that's the first message that it sends. I had enough respect or I care about you enough to take the time to do this. Beyond that, it's so unusual that it gets their attention.
Right.
So you stand out when you send that note. Also, your handwriting is like a fingerprint. Nobody has your handwriting. And regardless of how good or bad that handwriting is, it still speaks to who you are.
Right.
And those that like you will like the fact that you're sharing your handwriting with them.
Even the greeting card companies are struggling now because people are saying happy birthday by posting on somebody's Facebook instead of sending them a card. I mean, Jim, do you think we can ever turn things around?
I don't think it will ever be what it was for the greeting card companies, if that's what you're asking. However, to me, that creates such an enormous opportunity for this generation.
Yes.
That's the way I look at it. So that challenge is truly an opportunity for those that will subscribe to these old school concepts and ways.
I tell the young people at my office, we're not about high tech, we're about high touch. And
Exactly.
I had to teach my daughter, Sarah, how to work the phone because she, too, was a millennial and she was scared of the phone.
Right.
But now that she has the chutzpah and, confidence to use the phone, she's a phenomenal communicator. Let's talk a little bit about the phone.
Okay. The phone, I created a scale of connectedness, which starts with texting, then goes to emailing, and then phone. Would have a much higher score than those first two because you're able to use your tonation.
Mm-hmm.
You're also able to get direct and real-time feedback in a conversation on the phone. And that's why it's strange that the phone seems old school to us now, doesn't it? But it's really not. I mean, it's just a way of communicating that has such power. It has more power today than it did when it, maybe like it did when it first came out, perhaps in our parents' generation or in our grandparents' generation. So it's interesting, by going back to that, the
Yes.
power can be, regained.
My guest right now is author, speaker, Jim Whiddon. He is the author of The Old School Advantage. I know you also do some training. When companies will bring you in, what are some of the things that you train employees on?
Yeah, the first thing we're going to do is give them a refresher in those 5 communication areas that I mentioned. And then get into some leadership techniques, such as maybe something as simple as time management.
Mm-hmm.
Some simple ideas that allow them to be, we want to make them time, we want to call it time leadership, not just time management. In other words, we want to take it and lead it as opposed to managing it. So that's one that probably is very important. Also, the idea of lifelong learning. This is a generation, the average American reads 0.4 books per year.
Wow.
And again, just like I say, if you write 1 card a day, you can't fail. If you read 1 book a month, you virtually cannot fail in this society because it puts you so far ahead of your peers.
I love it.
And so those are a few of the points that we make, and we help them organize and create an internal book club where they're reading the same book together each month or each quarter. And the dynamics and the discussions that come from that are really quite phenomenal, quite extraordinary.
I bet you're popular with sales managers because the common complaint that we hear at my PR firm is they have a sales problem. They're coming to us for the marketing help, but the sales problem relates to the millennials and them not using the phone, them not doing the face-to-face well.
Right.
I mean, do you see a sales problem in the country?
Oh, there's no question about it. And as you know, nothing happens until something is sold.
Right.
Nobody else in a company is needed if the salesmen are not selling.
Right.
And so, of course, that's the critical. In fact, if I were going to boil it down to one critical component of the free market capitalist system that we have, it's the ability to sell, which has created it and made it what it is, the world's leader.
How long had you been working in your mind on the Old School Advantage?
In my mind, I started writing it perhaps 3 years ago. I started applying it to paper 2 years or a year after that. I feel like I've been writing it all my life, though, if that makes sense.
Right.
And my parents were helping me write it as they were raising me. And so I presented it one time for a group of educators, and a guy, I described the book, and he came up and he goes, "Oh, I get it. You wrote a long love letter for your kids." And
Wow.
I thought, wow, why didn't I think of that? But that's really what it amounts to. The idea behind the book was to give my children tools they could use to get along in this life when Dad is gone.
Wow.
Of course, my publisher said, well, let's get it out to more than just your children. Let's get it out to as many children as we can get to read it. And so that's a little bit of the backstory.
What an exceptional gift to give to your children.
There you go.
So I was on your website. Let's give a plug for that. And I also want to say you have the coolest clothes on the website. Would you describe? You've created like a old school store, haven't you?
Yes, we have, and in fact, it's been quite surprising how it's appealed to multiple generations. Really, I mean, I would say the three major generations that compose the country right now love the old school concept. In fact, it's Saturday, so it's football Saturday, right?
Right.
You will not watch a football game today, I would challenge our listeners, and not hear the term old school thrown out at some point during that game. And in fact, it's a term that's heard so often that it's virtually ubiquitous. And so we developed a shirt clothing line that has every team color in the country available on our website at theoldschoolmerch.cool. And kids love it, parents love it, even grandparents love it. You ought to see 80-year-old men light up when I give them an old school shirt. It just says the old school on it because they want to be known, yeah, I'm old school. So there's something cool about it.
And speaking of cool, I love the domain name that you have for your website. What is the domain name?
Right, it's theoldschool.cool as opposed to .com. So if you go to .com, you're not going to find us. In fact, I don't know what you'll find. Maybe I ought to look that up to make sure there's nothing untoward there. But it's theoldschool.cool because we're trying to make the old school cool.
Awesome.
And it really is anyway. We don't have to make it that way.
I just said awesome. Did you
hear
that?
But that's only once. You only use it once.
Right. That's right. Well, listen, we're going to have you back. Jim Whiddon, author of The Old School Advantage. That's theoldschool.cool.
Correct. And then the book is available on Amazon and all the bookstores.
Excellent.
Yep.
Exceptional interview. I sure appreciate your time. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Thank you. It's great to be here.
When we come back, solving the hunger problem in North Texas, we're going to be talking to the head of the North Texas Pioneers Rotary on what they're doing to make a difference. That's next on the Jeff Crilley Show.
More of the Jeff Crilley Show coming up.